Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. This week we focus on Chinese sprinter Su Bingtian, the man who shattered the ceiling for Asian speed. What did his record-breaking time truly represent? Does he stand among China's absolute sporting icons? Joining me for today's chat are my fantastic co-hosts Tian Yu and Brandon Yates. All right. Chinese superstar sprinter Su Bingtian has announced retirement from athletics, closing the chapter on a historic career. There's a number that people always remember when we talk about Su Bingtian, 9.83. That's the proud tag of Su. He ran the Asian record time of 9.83 seconds in the Tokyo Olympics men's 100-meter semi-final. A monumental achievement. So Tian Yu, from your perspective, what's the significance of this performance?
Well, honestly, I think Su's 9.83 is one of those moments where time basically freezes. It's like everybody suddenly realizes, an Asian sprinter can actually run with the best of the best. So for China, it was indeed a huge breakthrough. But for the world, I think it was also a shock to the system, because the number 9.83 is already elite on its own. But considering the fact that he did it at the age of 32, which is an age where most sprinters would consider retirement or just they are already on the decline, it just makes it even crazier. When you look at the all-time 100-meter list, I think it's almost predominantly Americans and Jamaicans, and just seeing a Chinese name in that mix is something nobody predicted years ago. So I think Su kind of kicked the door open himself. And also, think about this. He was the shortest guy in that Olympic final, standing at just 172 centimeters. That means he wasn't supposed to have the ideal sprinter body, yet he still pulled off something really historic. So he didn't just break a stereotype. He basically shattered it, not only for China, for Asia, but also for the entire sprinting world.
Right. I actually watched that race live from TV, and I mean, yes, Su Bingtian was the fastest man in China, but in Tokyo, he was lining up against the best sprinters in the world, and the general feeling was like, okay, making the semifinals was already good enough for him and Team China as a whole. I was shocked when he crossed the finish line first in that semi-final, but when the time flashed up 9.83, that was even more jaw-breaking. I was like, oh my God, that can't be true. I literally jumped off the sofa and shouted to my family, are you seeing this? You have to see this. The goosebumps were all over my arms. I guess that's the same reaction from the whole country at that time.
Definitely.
But to understand the sheer scale of that time, consider this. Su became the first Asian athlete ever to break 9.9 seconds, 9.83 to be exact. Let that sink in. That time would have won Olympic gold in every games up to and including 2004. It would have earned silver in both 2008 and 2016, the years Usain Bolt took gold. What makes it even more extraordinary, like you mentioned, is that Su was 32 years old when he did it. Bolt had already retired by that age. Su is the 12th human in history to run in 9.83 and stands alone as the only Asian on that list. The only regret is that that time was clocked in the semifinals instead of the final. Otherwise, I bet he could earn at least a silver, I would say. Brandon, how did that time, reshape perceptions of Asian athletes if we talk about the global landscape of track and field?
Well, just from a personal perspective, I'm 32 years old, and the idea of running 100 meters now just for fun seems like a daunting task. So the fact that somebody was able to run, not just sub 10, but sub, 9.9 at that age, and not being particularly tall either. That's another thing we forget. People like Usain Bolt in particular, not very quick off the mark, but, such a long stride because they're so tall. So just having that pure genetic advantage is absolutely massive. And so to be able to run that time at his age and at his height is just phenomenal. When I think of a sport like rugby, as you guys know, I'm a massive rugby fan, to be that explosive off the mark, I would have loved to have seen what he could have done in other sports too. But I think I had a similar reaction to you, Yang Guang, where, and it was also, I mean, not in the 100 meters, but it was also in running. When you see, someone from your country do something in a sport that is, kind of like a world-shattering moment, and in a sport that you are not, that your country is not particularly well known for, it is a pretty phenomenal moment, and it does definitely change not just local perspectives, but international perspectives and global perspectives about what is possible for people from that nation to do,
Yeah.
and I think that what Sue was able to do in that moment, not just for China, but for Asia and also for, people with that aren't 6'4" in sprinting, or people of a certain age, what is possible for them. I think a moment like that is absolutely incredible. And for South Africa, we had similar moments with people like, Wade van Niekerk and Caster Semenya, where they just weren't particularly well known in not even in South Africa at the time, but then went on to the Olympic stage and just absolutely, dominated their competitors and broke Olympic records, claimed gold medals, and put our nation, or with Su Bingtian, your nation on the map in a massive way in a sport where it wasn't your country isn't known for that sport. It's a very exciting moment, and I think that beyond that, Sue's impact after achieving that feat was probably also when we look at what has happened in China since then. I think it had a huge impact on what was done for sprinting and just track and field events development in China, similar to what someone like Yao Ming did for basketball in China, or what Li Na did for tennis in China. I think that it led to a lot of investment in coaching. I think a lot of talent identification, prospective athletes in China that weren't necessarily good at sports that are traditionally known for international success in China, gave them an opportunity to, try out for other sports, but not necessarily just try out for other sports, but also, try out for other sports, but also be noticed and identified and, given the correct facilities and coaching and pathways to become an international success in track and field. And I think that Sue's 9.83 was a huge catalyst for coaching investment, infrastructure investment, talent identification, and pathway creation for track and field athletes in China. So I think that in, the coming years, we will now also see future track and field stars coming out of China that may never have been noticed before that 9.83 moment.
Right. I guess that moment kind of redefined the possibility of Asian athletes
Yeah.
with 9.83. It's just huge, not only for China, but the continent as a whole. But Su's legacy is just beyond just a number. I mean, he entered the Guangdong provincial sprinting team at the age of just 17, and then his coach was the former national record holder in 100 meters. He made that statement that there's no way the Chinese sprinters can make it into 10 seconds in that distance. But guess what? 9 years later, in 2015, Su became the first Chinese man to break into 10 seconds barrier in 100-meter race, and also the first local Asian to reach the World Championship final. That was in Beijing in 2015, yeah. And Su made that breakthrough with Usain Bolt right next to him in that semi-final race. Bolt actually reflected on that race, and this is what he said. When the gun fired, the young kid near me got a flying start. This kind of threw me off a little bit, and I stumbled. I looked up and I panicked. The young kid that panicked Bolt was Su Bingtian. So Tianyu, considering Su's groundbreaking impact and countless records, if you have to name three, I mean the three greatest Chinese male athletes in history, Does Su's legacy earn him a position in that list? And if yes, who would you argue are the other two figures?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's totally fair to put Su in that list because I think like you said, his impact just goes way beyond that number and just one good race, as he changed what people believes is possible. Apart from him, I think for the other two athletes, my top picks are pretty clear. The first one definitely should be Liu Xiang. Liu Xiang's 2004 Olympic gold still stands as one of the most iconic sports moments of China ever. At a time when nobody associated China with the sports of track and field, he ran 12.91 seconds, tied the world record, and just became the first Chinese man to win an Olympic athletics gold. That win really flipped the script, and as it made people rethink what Asian athletes could do in explosive and power-based sports. And the second one, as you guys have mentioned, Yao Ming. Yao kind of did the same thing, but in a completely different world. He was coming in the NBA as a number one pick, and then he kind of became the franchise cornerstone in Houston and just held his own against the best big man in the league at that time. That was something kind of unheard of for an Asian player. So in terms of global impact and national success, I would say Yao Ming's resume is just undeniable. I think that's where Su joins them. He didn't just hit the 9.83 seconds. He proved Asians can be elite sprinters, and that alone just puts him right there with Liu and Yao.
Brandon, does Su count as one of the three greatest Chinese male athletes in history from your perspective? And if yes, who would be the other two?
Yeah, look, I think so. I think it depends on which way you look at it, because I think there's definitely, for example, some table tennis players and some divers and, that sort of thing that I think were, in terms of overall world championships and titles and records broken and that sort of thing, were probably more impactful as Chinese athletes in terms of their legacy and what they were able to, and even in winter sports, in terms of what the records that were broken and world titles won and that sort of thing, but maybe didn't necessarily become international superstars, but are probably incredibly famous and well regarded in China. But if you mention their name in South Africa or the United States or whatever it may be, they may not be as well known. So with that in mind, I think in terms of international impact and what they were able to do, I think I like the way that Tian Yu kind of described it there. So I think Liu Xiang's record-breaking Olympic gold in 2004 was probably the most international iconic Chinese Olympic moment from my perspective. I think that was when the world sat up and thought, oh my goodness, like here is a Chinese star in track and field that is absolutely dominated, and now China is this force and is coming in to dominate sports that we didn't necessarily associate with China. And I think that was a hugely impactful moment on the global stage. And I mean, it was so long ago now, to what, 2021, almost 22 years ago. But it's still something that is very much remembered now. I definitely remember that moment. I remember what the kit looked like, and I remember how far he was ahead of the competition. I remember the celebrations, and that was, it was a very iconic moment. But for me, I think there's no question whatsoever that the most famous athlete in the world from China still to this day is Yao Ming. I think if you ask anybody around the world, who's the first Chinese athlete that you think of, I think there's very few people outside of China that wouldn't mention Yao Ming as their first choice. I think that he was a game changer, in terms of China NBA relations, and also being a number one pick and a Hall of Famer and absolutely dominant against some of the best big men in history,
Yeah.
And this is still a video that I see on social media quite a lot, even to this day, during Yao Ming's Hall of Fame induction when Shaquille O'Neal went up to give a speech. And he mentioned a move that Yao Ming made, and then Shaq said, "Hey, Yao, that was a cool move." And then Yao Ming said, "Thanks, my brother." And then And then Shaq said, "What? Like I've been playing against you for how many years, and you speak English?" And Yao Ming said, "You never speak to me." And then it was just, I think that was also like a really cool moment to just show that there's so much, in terms of like people from different countries around the world that compete against each other, and we know so little about each other, and it just takes one moment to kind of break that ice and just,
Yeah.
realize that, hey, we might look different, sound different, speak different languages, but we have a lot more in common than we realize. So yeah, I think that if you had to look at a top three in terms of male athletes that had international impact, I think that Su Bingtian is definitely joined by Yao Ming and Liu Xiang. So yeah, that's my pretty darn iconic top three Chinese male athletes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so famous overseas. I
Yeah.
think the only figure that can be compared with him is Jackie Chan, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess other candidates in this debate could include maybe Lin Dan in badminton
Hmm.
or Ma Long in table tennis, but like Brandon mentioned, they succeeded in sports that China already dominates for so long. But what these three, Liu Xiang, Yao Ming, and Su Bingtian did was just they acted like trailblazers.
Yeah.
They did some groundbreaking job that means a lot for Chinese sports. All right, before we move on, here's a quick review of the biggest sports headlines in China and around the world for the past week. McLaren driver Lando Norris has claimed his first ever Formula One title at the season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Red Bull's Max Verstappen won the race with Norris finishing third behind his McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri in second. This result allowed Norris to edge Verstappen by just 2 points in the season standings.
I've achieved my dream, that little boy's dream. Yeah, me as a 6-year-old, like seeing it on TV, thinking, wow, I want to do that, and now I'm here and achieving it. This is crazy.
Norris became the first British champion since Lewis Hamilton in 2020 and also denied Verstappen a fifth straight title. Liverpool's Champions League hopes got a major lift as Dominic Szoboszlai buried an 88th minute penalty to give them a 1-0 win away at Inter Milan. But the victory came with a heavy cloud hanging over the squad, with a deepening clash between Mohamed Salah and head coach Arne Slot. Slot addressed the tension, insisting the group has stayed mentally strong through the turmoil.
I think I can only compliment my players about how much mentality and fighting spirit they've shown throughout this whole season. That we've been multiple times very unlucky. That's also clear, and that has led to the position we are in the league.
Real Madrid's problems deepened after a 2-1 defeat at home to Manchester City that leaves coach Xabi Alonso's future very much on the line. In other action, Barcelona returned to winning ways as Jules Koundé's quick-fire brace lifted them to a 2-1 comeback victory over Eintracht Frankfurt at Camp Nou. Bayern Munich rallied from Joshua Kimmich's own goal to beat Sporting CP 3-1 at home. Lionel Messi has become the first back-to-back winner of the MLS MVP award, adding another milestone to a remarkable season that also saw him named MLS Cup MVP. The 38-year-old guided Inter Miami to its first league title, collecting 2 assists in the 3-1 final win over the Vancouver Whitecaps. Messi finished the postseason with a record 15 goal contributions and logged at least 1 goal or assist in every playoff match. FIBA is working with the NBA to launch a new European club basketball competition in 2027, aiming to reshape the continent's professional scene. The proposed league would feature 16 teams from major cities such as London, Paris, Rome, Berlin, and Barcelona, and is intended as a joint FIBA-NBA venture rather than a purely NBA product. The International Federation of American Football has announced it will move its global headquarters to Lausanne, Switzerland. IFAF, the governing body for American and flag football, says the move is a major milestone in the sport's development and its ongoing commitment to the Olympic movement. Welcome back. Su Bingtian's success was built on the fusion of elite talents and, most importantly, scientific training and technical precision. I read his story. He actually changed his starting foot midway through his career. This is a huge, actually, a fundamental change for a sprinter.
Yeah.
It means your whole muscle memory could be altered.
Yeah.
It could take years to make that switch, but Su made that switch in just 6 months. Credits must be given to his, self-discipline and hard work. But
Courage.
yeah, but more importantly, to the coaching staff
Yeah.
behind the scene. So Tianyu, what does Su's growth reveal about, China's current state and trajectory in athletics development system? And is Su's breakthrough a replicable model that promises more, contenders from China in sprinting and other events?
Well, yeah, I think Su kind of said it best at his retirement post on social media. He said 9.83 is a reminder that nothing is impossible. And the number is actually, the record is actually a beam of light for every young sprinters coming up. So if he can do it, why not them? And I think that's huge for a country trying to build confidence in sprinting. As for where China stands right now, I would say the overall picture is actually quite encouraging. At the 2025 World Championships in Tokyo, I think China didn't bring home a stack of gold medals, but the team showed real depth and, more importantly, real emerging and youth power. Because over 60% of the squad was actually born after the year 2000. And that's a massive wave coming in. And if I had to highlight just a couple of standouts, Zhang Jiale in women's hammer throw, she's only 18 years old. And it was the first time for her to step on the world stage. But she still walked away with the bronze. And that was some big-time composure. Wang Zhaozhao in men's 20-kilometer race walk, he grabbed a silver at the age of only 26, and I think he looked like he's someone who can anchor that event for years. And also apart from them, the usual strengths like women's throws, men's jumps, and race walking are still holding strong. And I think with so many teenagers and early 20s athletes already performing on the world stage, you can feel that the next generation is forming right before our eyes. And I think that's exactly where Su's legacy kicks in. I think Su is the guy who already proved that limits is doomed to be moved and broken. And now I think these young athletes are chasing that energy.
Right. I like the part you mentioned, Su's remarks, nothing is impossible. Since we are talking about sprinting, it inevitably raises the timeless question, what's the theoretical limit of human in 100-meter dash? Scientists used to predict that sky limit would be 9.9 seconds, but look at the record now, 9.58. So Brandon, what is your ultimate guess of that limit in humans' 100-meter race?
Yang Guang, when you said 9.99, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the film Cool Runnings, where those sprinters from Jamaica, they failed to make the 100-meter finals and then they become bobsledders. And the one coach was talking to the Jamaican guy, an American coach was speaking to the Jamaican guy, and he told him how his father ran at 10 flat. And then the Jamaican son with that iconic Jamaican accent, he said, "Well, I did it in 9.9." So that was back in I think that was like the 90s. And like you said, back then that was a remarkable feat. And now, if you're not running sub 10, it's kind of considered, like, well, you don't even have a future in the sport. So like you said, Yang Guang, I think that what is deemed to be humanly possible seems to change over the decades. And look, I mean, there's not too much. If you look at the 100 meters in particular right now, as things stand, there doesn't seem to be too many names to mention that are probably looking like they are going to go on and break Usain Bolt's record, for example. I mean, Noah Lyles, he's got quite a big mouth, and he's quite an interesting character, but he seems to be the best sprinter in the world, and he's winning Olympic golds and that sort of thing. But are there any guys like him or around him that are looking like they're going to break records? I'm not so sure. There might be a couple of teenagers coming through. There might be a couple of talents emerging that we might see on the next Olympic stage that we've never heard of. I mean, to be fair, also, when Usain Bolt was kind of entering the Olympics, he was famous, but he wasn't world famous. He wasn't this international superstar, but he became one very quickly. So I'm hoping that someone does come through in the 100 meters in the next, 4 to 8 years that really does reshape what we believe is possible. And I think that Usain Bolt definitely did that for me. I mean, the way that he started some of those 100-meter finals, kind of level with the competition. And then, by the halfway point, had his shoelaces untied. Reminded us at the end of the race that he had chicken nuggets for breakfast, and was still like, 3 or 4 or 5 strides ahead of the competition. And you saw him kind of like looking to the sides, not even going at full speed. And you saw his competitors looking like they were about to give their last breath before getting over that line and still getting absolutely dominated. So we don't really have any names at the moment that I think are that dominant, at least in the 100 meters. I'm hoping that someone does come around and does do that again, but at the moment it's not looking like it's going to happen anytime soon. Look, I think realistic lower bounds for the men's 100-meter ultimate record maybe is somewhere between 9.5, 9.6. Maybe that is humanly possible at some point. At the moment, I think that scientists and statisticians and that sort of thing don't believe that below 9.49 is possible. I think that's what's special about the Olympics, though, is that I think in any sport, I think at least once every 4 years, as the human race, we are often reminded that what we believe is possible is actually wrong. And, like people like Su Bingtian have said, and, like a quote that we mentioned earlier, nothing is impossible. Time will tell, and I hope that we don't only continue to see it in the 100-meter sprints. I hope that, as the Olympics and Asian Games and, China National Games, as all of these things continue to come along as the years progress, I hope that we continue to see superstars emerge from out of the blue and redefine what we believe is possible.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see what kind of record will be written in the future. But before that, I don't see Su Bingtian's Asian record to be smashed anytime soon.
Yeah.
Su retired but left behind a faster China and a more believing Asia in sprinting. Yeah. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.